Let's begin Ayodeji from Afrinvest. Ayodeji, good morning. Thanks for coming through on the program. Ayo, thank you very much. We thank you for showing up on the program. Okay, now let's get started from the numbers I'm sure that you see there from the oil and gas listed stocks. Talk to us about last week. Do you think the market was beginning to react to some of those numbers? Do you think we saw that reaction, that trading in Owando because of his 2015 and 2016 earnings release?
Yes, thanks for that question. Looking at what's in terms of the trend and activities in Owando last week, you will recall that Owando recently notified the market of its program in terms of debt restructuring. I think that was part of what spurred investors' expectation last week. We saw the market week on week grow about 10%. Most investors are anticipating that based on the new restructuring, the debt burden on the company will minimize, and as a result, it's good news for shareholders. It means within the short term, they should expect some payout as they reduce their interest burden on the company.
Ayodeji, do you think the latest numbers and a few other things that the management and the board are doing, the things you think they are doing, this stock has turned the corner? Do you think it has found that support level and is beginning to start to move higher at this level? This is a price we've not seen since 2016 started, 8 naira 5 kobo.
Yes, I think overall investors will still remain skeptical in terms of, if you look recently, the company have been into a lot of activity in terms of capital restructuring, raise equity today, tomorrow restructure, debt to equity conversion. There's been a lot of activities within the company, and as a result, investors sometimes get confused when you tell us last year you're raising equity capital, this year you're raising debt capital, you are trying to refinance some of your past debt. So overall, I don't think the rally we saw last week is sustainable. In terms of their results, they're still in a loss position, though for some of the recent development in terms of trying to ramp up its gas production activities, that will help diversify its revenue base. And also in terms of some of the recent development, the downstream space, which I think they got some cash injection, which will also help reinvest in their upstream sector. So for overall, I don't think the rally we saw last week is sustainable. And a lot of the activities that the company is doing in recent and the last 2 years does not post confidence on most of the investors. So investors still remain skeptical on the performance of the company going forward.
Yeah, that's speaking specifically about Owando. Let's spread the industry a little bit now. In terms of where we are recent now with the government meeting with all workers union and say, hey, this folks says they want to go on strike. There are concerns all over again about petrol availability, where product prices will go up. Do you think this will have impact moving forward in the near to short term on other listed energy retailers in our market?
No, I don't think, based on the recent issues that have been raised by either Pengassan and Nupeng in terms of their employee issues and some of the expected development that they expect to have occurred within the space, and it's yet to yield any result. So I feel when the NNPC or the federal government deregulates the market, we saw a lot of improved sentiment in those stocks, and that have been pricing in especially stocks trading with that have activities within the downstream space that have been priced in, and those that have activity within the upstream space, their continued investment in gas production has also helped improve investors' confidence on their company. So I don't see any downside as a result of the issues the unions have raised, having any downside on these companies. I will expect that this year most of these companies their top line should improve, because for the most part of last year, most of them were not able to import as a result of the foreign exchange challenges. But with some of the recent development, we expect that some of them will begin to look for areas where they can take advantage of in terms of competition within the space now that it has been regulated. We see some filling stations selling at 140, 135. You see, we're expecting that most of the pronounced names, that we should see them also trying to compete within this space, because for some of them that have access to forex because of their upstream business. So we should expect that activity. We don't expect any negative activity in the interim on the oil and gas shares.
Oh, okay, Ayo, let's spend about the next 5 minutes or thereabouts together to discuss about the NNPC, the big brother. The NNPC group reporting its first operational profit in 15 years. That was some good news, about 290 million, about 300 million naira. Now we have a new board in place, a new management, a de facto chairman who has run the NNPC and who has also been part of the new administration. We have a new group managing director who is also an industry person. So it looks like the entire team is complete. What's next for NNPC? What do you think should be next? You are an investment banker. You are a research analyst.
Yes, thanks for that. I think the first thing, interesting thing about this is the chairman, the current chairman, has been part of the company before. So we expect, compared to what we have before, you expect that at board meetings, because the current chairman understands the processes, understands the business, will be able to add significant value to more value to the company. And we should expect that within the NNPC, some of what I feel they will need to focus more on now is how they can ramp up production within the 4 refineries. Most of the assets, the oil assets, have gone bad in terms of pipelines. They will need to see how they can partner in terms of resuscitating that, so that transportation of some of the products, even after it's being refined, will be very smooth and it will reduce cost. The NNPC will also need to look at efficiency in terms of how can they help improve operations within the downstream space, so that the regulation that have just been pronounced will be able to see the benefits of it. So the more they are able to improve on their efficiency, the more we'll be able to see a reduction in the cost of this product. I think the new board too will be saddled with the responsibility of trying to see how the PIB, the Petroleum Industry Bill, would be passed. For us, we are suggesting that this should be passed in parts, because we've seen it's taking a very long time. So trying to identify some of the critical parts that would help unlock activities within the oil and gas space, from either the upstream, midstream, and the downstream space. So we expect that there's a lot of responsibility for them to oversee within this space. And lest we forget, the joint JV cash calls or obligations is also still there. NNPC is unable to meet with its obligation as agreed. So they need to see how they'll be able to raise funds to meet with their obligation, so that it will also help smoothing activities within the oil and gas space.
Dr. Ibeka will be credited for being the one who returns the NNPC into profitability, at least before he leaves that position and becomes the chairman. So that will go on his record. But then, do you think that Ibeka Chikwu and the new group managing director should sit down with the board and say, look, we're talking about unbundling the NNPC. The president is quite keen about reforming the NNPC. He's taking some actions that folks can see. Do you think this is the time for them to come and talk to the market, speak to the market, and perhaps begin to think of how to list some part of the NNPC on the market?
Yes, I think I agree with you totally. Then when in the section of the past MD, that's Dr. Ibeka Chikwu, the assets then were not in good shape, and even the value you would have been able to get from those assets then will not be significant. But now with some of the restructuring that has been done within the space of its stay within the 11 months, we expect to get the NNPC will get greater value for those assets now, and this is high time they began to look at listing so that they can also help solve some of their liquidity issues. Like I mentioned earlier, the JV cash call obligations, if they are able to relinquish some of their stakes in this asset, they will be able to raise funds and they will be able to meet up with their obligation. Even the burden of going forward, the burden of JV cash calls will not be significant on them if they have reduced their stake. I think this is some of the things that they should be looking at.
In other words, Ayo, you mean the NNPC just returned from China looking for about $80 billion deals to invest in the upstream and downstream sector. That's good. But again, you say that if they list on the market, perhaps if they do cross-border listing, perhaps list in Lagos, list in London, perhaps in Malaysia or wherever, that would be good. But again, what part of the business do you think the NNPC group should think and should sell to the president to sell very quickly? The downstream side or the upstream side?
I think starting the downstream part is less complex, and it's easier to get a lot of investors to buy into that space. So with the deregulation now, it will be easier for them to leave that out for other independent marketers to run that business. So in terms of trying to get importation of finished products, in terms of getting tank farms, they shouldn't involve themselves in some of those activities. They should focus more on the upstream sector, which would also help ramp up the federal government revenue. We'll be able to meet up with our quota based on the quota from OPEC, and it will also help us in terms of meeting up with our obligation as a government.
Ayodeji, thank you very much. We appreciate your time this morning flagging off the market.